Shalom and Maranatha. Welcome to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic, the only ministry in the world where we look at the truth of the scriptures, taking the Septuagint, the oldest translation that currently exists of the Bible, in the most complete form that came 300 years before Jesus Christ, 200 to 300 years, and the Masoretic text, which came after Jesus Christ was on this earth, roughly, I'd say 70 years, and it took, I think it was 300 years after his death, and it was only complete until 1,000 years after, so it went through many changes. So we're going to look today at Deuteronomy chapter 26. We're looking at the Bible from cover to cover. The goal is to look at Genesis to the end of the prophets, so all of the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, and Yah willing, we'll do the New Testament as well. So we'll do Deuteronomy 26 today, beginning in verse 2. There are 19 verses in this chapter. It says here, to have his name called there versus place his name there. The next difference is verse 3, my Elohim right there, versus your Elohim. Verse 5, we have the first significant difference in this chapter. It says, he shall answer, referring to the priest, versus you shall speak, referring to the person doing the offering. There's a big difference here. It says here, my father abandoned Syria. So Abraham left Ur of the Chaldees in Mesopotamia, which is in modern day northern or northwest Syria, but perhaps Iraq. I believe it most likely is Iraq, not Syria. And this was referring to Jacob/Israel, not Abraham, when he went to Egypt to see Joseph, and they established their families there for hundreds of years. Versus a Syrian ready to perish was my father, ready to die or was desperate to leave. So yeah, that's the first big difference here. Verse 6, it says here, humbled us and imposed hard tasks on us, versus evil entreated us and laid upon us hard bondage. Verse 7, we have the word humiliation being used versus oppression. Verse 8, we have an omission of himself with his great strength, referring to Yah. As well, there's the word great visions, things that were visible, versus great terribleness, which means amazing things, but they were not visible perhaps. It's not as explicit in the Masoretic. Verse 11, we see here your family versus your house, within you versus among you. So they are part of your community versus they're just mingled with you, interspersed among you, just mixed with you. Verse 12, the word fruits versus incense. So that is an interesting, not incense, increase, pardon me. And then we have an addition of the year of tithing that was added. Significant difference is you shall give the second tenth to the stranger, to the Levite, I should say, versus and have given. So the first tithe we know is to Yah. The second tithe then is in this third year is to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. And it says here, and be merry versus be filled. So being merry means being emotionally filled and physically filled. So as a result of being physically filled, makes you emotionally content, versus being only physically satisfied. Verse 13, fully collected versus brought away. And then there's an omission of my house. Significant difference in this verse. I did not forget. I did not forget it, your command, versus neither have I forgotten them, the widow, the orphan, etc. So it's referring to the commandment, not to the orphan, the widow, etc. Okay, verse 14, distress versus mourning. There's an omission of unclean purpose. And it says here again, our Elohim versus my Elohim. And then in verse 15, them. You have given them versus us. Verse 16, we have the word observe, or observe and do them versus keep. Verse 17, chosen. So this is a personal relationship that they have with Elohim versus avouched. You have avouched, which is to declare, to be made known publicly. And an omission here, to walk in all his ways. The word all was omitted. Okay, and continuing in the same verse, an addition of commandments, the word commandments. Verse 18, Yah has chosen you versus Yah has avouched you. So again, public declaration. But no, we can see it's a personal relationship that he's making. It's not just making a public declaration. It is something very personal and a relationship, an intimate relationship. It says here, as he said versus as he has promised you. And then an addition of all his commandments. So they added the word all there. Verse 19, and that you should be above all nations. So by obeying him, Israel will be above all nations, and so on. Verses, and to make you high above all nations which he has made, in praise and in name and in honor. So they will automatically be high above all nations by default. Whereas no, it's not the case here. They have to obey him in order to be above them. As he has made you renowned and a boast and glorious, versus above all nations which he has made, in praise and in name and in honor. So the focus here is on Israel and not the nations. So the Masoretic, it's focusing on the nations. It's saying that he made these nations in praise and in name and in honor. Perhaps that's one way you can interpret it, but in the Septuagint, it's clearly saying that he has made you, Israel, renowned and a boast. So the focus is on Israel. It's pretty clear. That's what's happening here. And the word renowned means of good reputation. He has made them of a good reputation versus and in name, so reputation. It's just having a reputation. You should be versus you may be. So they have a choice, a responsibility to be holy. Holiness is a choice that we have to make. It's not merely by default versus, they may or may not be the holy people. Okay, so that's all for this chapter. Thank you very much for your time. May Allah bless you all and make your way prosperous. Until next time, we'll look at Deuteronomy chapter 26. Shalom and Maranatha.